Welcome back to Racecraft Explained. If you enjoy Formula One analysis like this, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment with your predictions for the Belgian Grand Prix. Your support really helps the channel grow. So, imagine sitting on a 66-point championship lead. That is enough of a buffer to practically skip 2 entire race weekends, sit on a beach somewhere, and still wake up on Monday morning leading the Formula One World Championship.
Which sounds pretty nice right about now, honestly.
Right. But now I want you to imagine watching that massive safety net just poof, evaporate in the span of 3 weeks. And not because you forgot how to drive, but because your car is, well, essentially melting from the inside out.
Yeah, melting is a pretty accurate way to put it, honestly.
Yeah, so welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tearing into the telemetry, all the paddock gossip, and the data ahead of round 10 of the 2026 Formula One season, which is the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. We've got this really detailed breakdown from Formula1.com today, and looking through these storylines, the common thread isn't just about the racing itself. I mean, it is about pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
Pressure on the parts, pressure on the drivers, and just extreme pressure in the paddock right now.
It really is the defining characteristic of this exact moment in the season. I mean, we're heading into the final race before the August summer break, which, it naturally acts as this giant pressure cooker for the entire grid anyway.
Right. Everyone wants to go into the break on a high.
Exactly. But the specific dynamics we're seeing right now with these massive swings in reliability, unprecedented aerodynamic failures, and a completely deadlocked driver market, it makes this weekend at Spa feel incredibly volatile.
Highly volatile. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that evaporating championship lead, because the Kimi Antonelli story is just staggering to me. I mean, 3 races ago, rolling into Barcelona, Antonelli was virtually untouchable.
Untouchable.
He had just put together this crazy run of 5 straight victories. And let's remember, those are the first 5 wins of his entire Formula One career.
It's just still just wild to think about.
Right, and he was sitting on top of that 66-point mountain over Lewis Hamilton. But following Silverstone, that gap has just been slashed. Antonelli is now only 25 points clear of his Mercedes teammate, George Russell.
Yeah, and Hamilton is just 32 points back now.
Exactly. So one bad afternoon at Spa, and this championship is suddenly a dead heat.
And, that shrinking gap is almost entirely down to mechanical gremlins, which I think really highlights a fundamental engineering trap that Mercedes is caught in right now. I mean, in 2 of the last 3 races, the machinery has just straight up failed Antonelli.
Yeah, like at Silverstone.
Right, take Silverstone, for example. He was on track for a guaranteed second place, possibly even challenging for the win, before a failure with the wheel shield derailed his entire afternoon, left him with 0 points.
Yeah, and I want to break down that specific failure for a second because, we throw terms around like wheel shield and it sounds minor, like a piece of plastic falling off your Honda Civic or something.
Right, exactly. Just a little trim piece.
Yeah, but on a Formula One car, the aerodynamic wake coming off a spinning open tire is incredibly turbulent. It's essentially just dirty, chaotic air. So that wheel shield is there to manage that airflow, keeping it away from the sensitive aerodynamics of the floor.
Which is where all the grip comes from.
Exactly. So when that shield breaks, you aren't just losing a small piece of carbon fiber, you are suddenly exposing the whole car to a massive wall of drag. I mean, it is quite literally like deploying a parachute behind the front tire at 200 miles per hour.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. I mean, the aerodynamic efficiency of the car just plummets. Yeah. And the driver is left bleeding lap time with, no way to drive around the issue. It's impossible.
But I guess the bigger question is, how do you balance pushing for a win against just trying to survive to the finish line? Because I look at this situation like overclocking a high-end gaming PC.
Well, I like that analogy.
Right. You want maximum performance to run the heaviest software, so you push the processor to its absolute limit. But if you don't add extra cooling fans, you are mathematically guaranteeing that the motherboard is going to fry. Mercedes has this blistering speed, but to stay ahead of Ferrari and Red Bull, they are having to overclock the car, and the parts are melting.
Yeah, the thermodynamic tightrope in Formula One is just brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, to gain aerodynamic speed, you want the car to be as sleek as possible. So that means closing up the cooling louvers, the little gills on the bodywork.
Right, so the air slips over the car instead of getting caught inside it.
Exactly. You want the air flowing cleanly over the car. But when you close those cooling elements, the internal temperatures skyrocket. And if you open them up to save the engine from melting, You create drag, and then Ferrari just breezes right past you on the straight.
Catch-22.
Total catch-22. Mercedes is being forced to prioritize pure pace over reliability. Because, honestly, if they detune the engine even a fraction to save it, they lose the race anyway.
And pushing the car to the absolute limit breaks parts. Which brings us perfectly to another driver who has uncharacteristically struggled to keep it on the track recently. Because Max Verstappen desperately needs a reset.
Desperately.
I mean, he left the British Grand Prix with a grand total of 3 points. 3. For a 4-time world champion in a Red Bull, 3 points is an absolute disaster.
Oh, the momentum shift for Verstappen has been completely jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw a lot of optimism from the Red Bull garage in Austria regarding their new upgrade package.
Right. Everyone thought they were back.
Yeah, but that optimism just evaporated amidst this string of terrifying high-speed exits. I mean, he crashed in Q3 during qualifying in Austria, and then he slid off the track at massive speed while fighting for a podium at Silverstone.
And for anyone newer to the sport listening, Q3 is that final, frantic, 12-minute qualifying shootout where the top 10 drivers turn their engines up to maximum power and run like the absolute lightest fuel loads. It's the highest stakes moment of the whole weekend.
Where precision is paramount. You can't make a single mistake.
Exactly. But the source data points to a very specific and honestly terrifying technical cause for these crashes. A lack of downforce caused by the rear wing straight mode mechanism closing unexpectedly.
Yeah, and we really need to unpack the physics of that failure to understand what Verstappen is actually dealing with out there.
Right, because it's not just him messing up.
No, not at all. You see, a Formula One car relies on 2 types of grip. Mechanical grip comes from the rubber of the tires biting into the asphalt. But aerodynamic grip downforce comes from the air pushing the car down into the track.
And at high speeds, mechanical grip is basically nothing.
Right, exactly. In a high-speed corner, mechanical grip is nowhere near enough to keep the car on the road. You rely almost entirely on the rear wing acting like an inverted airplane wing, just crushing the rear tires into the ground.
So if you are cornering at 160 miles per hour, trusting that the air is holding you to the track, and a mechanical switch suddenly fails, causing that wing to change its angle,
the downforce simply vanishes instantly. It is like someone turning off gravity while you are mid-stride.
Wow.
The rear of the car becomes weightless, the tires lose their contact patch, and the car just snaps. And no matter how good you are, even if you have 4 world championships on your resume, you become a passenger the millisecond that aerodynamic profile changes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I understand the physics of the failure, right? But I have to push back a little. We are so used to Max being practically robotic in his consistency. He's the guy who drives around problems, who wrestles an unbalanced car to a podium. So when a 4-time world champion starts flying off the track in back-to-back weekends, is it purely the car's straight mode mechanism, or is the pressure of the upcoming season starting to bleed into his on-track focus?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
that is the elephant in the garage right now, and it's a totally valid perspective. Even Verstappen himself said after the race that he needed a few days to just reset and try again.
Yeah, he looked completely exhausted in that post-race interview.
He was visibly drained. And when you combine the psychological burden of not being able to trust what your car is going to do in a high-speed corner with the relentless media circus surrounding his 2027 contract, it is going to take a toll.
It has to.
A driver requires total subconscious trust in the machinery to operate at the absolute limit. If you are second-guessing the rear wing entering a corner, you are going to make mistakes. It's human nature.
And that media circus isn't just a minor headline either. That off-track noise is the very anchor of the 2027 driver market, which is just rapidly approaching a boiling point. The rumor mill has completely seized up the paddock.
Oh, it's totally gridlocked.
Yeah. Verstappen has been heavily linked with a shock move to McLaren, and that rumor alone was enough to force Mark Webber, who manages Oscar Piastri, to publicly intervene.
Yeah, that was a massive statement from Webber.
Right. Webber had to go on record to explicitly push back on the idea that Piastri was going to be moved aside to make room for Max. He basically said that McLaren repeatedly wants Piastri for the long term and that Oscar is completely focused on staying exactly where he is.
Which tells you just how destabilizing this whole situation really is. When managers of other star drivers are being forced to defend their territory in the press, it means the paddock is in a state of high anxiety.
It's like a high-speed game of musical chairs.
Yeah.
If Max takes a seat at McLaren, who gets left standing?
Yeah. Exactly. The driver market is an ecosystem dictated entirely from the top down. The top-tier teams, the Red Bulls, the McLarens, the Mercedes, they are the apex predators here.
Right.
Nobody further down the grid can make a move until those top seats are filled. The top-tier seats dictate the movement of all the less competitive seats.
It makes you think of the real estate market. You have a bunch of people trying to buy houses, but the entire chain is frozen because one billionaire hasn't decided which beachfront mansion he wants to buy.
That's spot on.
Until Verstappen signs a piece of paper, everyone else is just living out of suitcases. And the source actually mentions Fernando Alonso is another veteran whose next move is heavily tied to this exact domino effect.
The bottleneck is very real, and the clock is ticking so loudly right now. We're heading into the August summer break. Historically, teams want their driver lineups for the following year locked in before they shut down the factories for those mandated 2 weeks.
Right, they do not want contract negotiations bleeding into the second half of the season.
Definitely not. So the team principals are caught in this agonizing position. If you have an empty seat, do you wait for Max Verstappen to make a decision, hoping you can land a generational talent? Or do you panic, realize you might miss out on him, and quickly sign a solid backup driver before that backup signs with a rival team?
Yeah, because if you wait too long, you might end up with nobody.
Exactly. That tension is exactly what is driving the paranoia behind the scenes this weekend. We are going to see frantic, closed-door meetings in the motorhomes at Spa and again next week in Hungary. The teams are terrified of missing out on their preferred drivers.
So we have a shrinking championship gap, an overheating Mercedes, a Red Bull with terrifying downforce failures, and an entire paddock consumed by contract paranoia. And all of this extreme pressure is being funneled into a circuit that practically guarantees pure, unpredictable, on-track chaos.
Spa-Francorchamps is certainly not a normal racetrack.
No, it's not. I mean, just looking at the telemetry and the topography of this place is mind-bending. How on earth do engineers set up a car for a track that is basically a roller coaster?
It's the ultimate crucible for a Formula One car, honestly. When you speak to the drivers, Spa is almost universally revered. It shares that legendary status with Silverstone because of what it demands from both the driver and the engineers.
Right, because Spa is literally draped over the hills of the Ardennes forest. You start with this plunging downhill acceleration out of the Luxor's hairpin. The cars gather immense speed, dropping into a valley, and then they hit this massive compression at the bottom before firing blindly up the steep hill through the Eau Rouge and Raidillon complex.
And the compression is violent. I mean, the vertical G-forces force the car's suspension to completely bottom out against the asphalt.
You literally see sparks flying everywhere.
Sparks everywhere. The driver is physically crushed down into the cockpit, and they have to maintain absolute throttle commitment while threading a needle over a blind crest at well over 180 miles per hour. If your aerodynamics aren't perfectly balanced, the car will just wash out and hit the wall.
But the challenge doesn't even stop there. Once you survive that, you have massive long straights. But then you hit Sector 2. The source breakdown specifically highlights corners like Pouffon, this long, sweeping, downhill double apex left-hander where the cars are absolutely on the ragged edge of their aerodynamic grip. You need speed for the straights, but maximum grip so you don't fly off at Pouffon.
Yeah, and you were describing the fundamental technical compromise of Spa-Francorchamps. Sectors 1 and 3 are defined by incredibly long, flat-out straights. To go fast there, you want a skinny rear wing with very little drag. You want the car to just slip through the air.
Right, maximum top speed.
Exactly. But Sector 2 is a twisting, grip-limited roller coaster. If you run that skinny wing, you will be a missile on the straights, but when you arrive at Pouhon, the car will slide laterally across the track.
Which just completely shreds the tires.
Precisely. You will overheat the surface of the rubber, destroy your tire life, and lose all the time you just made up on the straight. But conversely, if you bolt on a massive rear wing to protect the tires and stick to the track in Sector 2, you become a sitting duck on the long run up to Liscombes.
Right, you'll be overtaken effortlessly because your car is dragging a parachute through the air.
The engineers have to find a razor-thin middle ground. It's a nightmare.
And all of that compromise leads into the final overtaking opportunity. The bus stop chicane. You are coming off a high-speed run and slamming on the brakes. That heavy braking zone is prime real estate for brave drivers to make overtakes.
Oh, absolutely.
But it tests the absolute thermal limits of the brake cooling, which, as we discussed with Mercedes earlier, is already being pushed to the breaking point. Setting up a car for Spa is a monumental task in perfect dry conditions. But the Ardennes forest has one final, terrifying wildcard up its sleeve for this weekend.
The weather.
Exactly. Spa is located deep in the Ardennes forest, and there is a massive risk of rain across all 3 days this weekend.
Yeah, Spa has its own microclimate, and the threat of rain is omnipresent there. But the rain this year carries an entirely different level of risk compared to previous seasons.
Right, because the track is huge. It's over 7 kilometers, or about 4.3 miles long. Because of that sheer scale, it can literally be pouring rain down at La Source, while the back half of the circuit out by Pouhon is completely bone dry.
Which is terrifying for strategy.
Completely. And most importantly, the grid has had basically zero collective wet sessions with these new 2026 chassis and tires. I mean, save for some minor preseason shakedowns and Pirelli testing, they have no data. So what does this all mean? Imagine driving 200 miles per hour into a dark forest where you literally don't know if the next corner is dry tarmac or a puddle.
What's fascinating here is it's not just the rain. It's the unknown behavior of the 2026 cars in the rain.
Right, the learning curve is going to be incredibly steep.
These teams live and die by data. They usually have terabytes of historical telemetry telling them exactly how a car behaves when the track temperature drops or when standing water accumulates. This weekend, that database is effectively blank.
Which brings us back to Verstappen's rear wing failing in the dry. Imagine that unpredictability, but you're completely blinded by spray.
Exactly. It forces the drivers to rely entirely on instinct rather than engineering.
Yeah.
And because the track is 7 kilometers long, tire strategy is almost impossible when the weather is localized. The engineers have to make a call. Do you pit for wet tires to survive the raining sector, knowing those wet tires will overheat and fall apart on the dry half of the lap?
Or do you gamble and keep the slicks on?
Right, and pray your driver can tiptoe through the wet corners without putting the car on the wall. Without 2026 wet weather data, the computers cannot give them the answer. The driver has to feel it out corner by corner.
It is the definition of a perfect storm, weighing in Belgium. We have a shrinking championship gap, Kimi Antonelli battling mechanical gremlins, Max Verstappen seeking redemption amidst all these crazy contract rumors, and an untested 2026 grid facing the daunting, potentially rain-soaked roller coaster of Spa. This is why we tune into F1 for weekends where absolutely everything is on a knife edge.
The margin for error this weekend is literally zero. The team that wins won't necessarily have the fastest car. It'll be a team that adapts to the absolute unknown.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder before this weekend gets underway. If these 2026 cars have truly never been tested in the wet, and the championship leader's Mercedes is already struggling to hold itself together in the dry, could a chaotic, rainy Sunday at Spa be the exact catalyst that completely flips the championship standings on its head?
One puddle, one locked brake, or one misjudged strategy call, and we could be looking at a completely different world championship leader by Sunday evening.
We will definitely be watching the radar. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to subscribe to Racecraft Explained, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below with your thoughts and race predictions. We'd love to hear your opinion. See you in the next Formula One analysis.